Let's have ourselves a bit of a gander over the MDD nodes. MDD files are, of course, baked vertex data for animation, and MDD is much like a collection of morphs, one for every frame. So animations of things can be baked down to an MDD file, allowing you to lose all bones, controllers, or anything else that's been driving whatever it is you have animated. This, of course, locks the animation down, prevents it being altered, and it also speeds up your scene because you're not having to calculate the rig, set up deformers, or whatever else was driving it. And MDDs are pretty commonly used. Often we're used to adding them in the Add Displacement drop-down, where we have different plugins for applying MDDs, but we have similar tools here in Nodal, which of course have vector outputs because the MDD is a kind of displacement. And these are the common nodes that we have. We have the Lightwave native one here, and we have DP's nodes as well. His MDD pointer node is much the same as this. He has a meta pointer, which is like metalink, so for driving an object by an MDD that doesn't technically belong to it. He also has a PC2 pointer node, which is for PC2 format vertex cache animations, and a BDD player, which is again Lightwave format for the equivalent of MDD that gets saved for hard effects, which is a scan of the pivot points of the parts. Though you could of course bake hard effects using MDD if you wanted. Let's have a quick look at the settings here. Obviously you have a file name where you load the MDD file that you're after. A frame offset allows you to set where in time it will start. A replay speed, so you can slow it down and speed it up. Stop loop or ping pong. A scale. A unit to help you match between different softwares that you might have used, because of course MDD isn't just for working within Lightwave, it's also for taking baked animation from Lightwave to other packages or from other packages into Lightwave. And you can either match by coordinates or nodes. Nodes is point for point, so point order must line up. Coordinate allows for a different point order and it matches points based on their coordinates where they overlap. Most of the time, if the MDD has been saved on the same object you're loading it back onto, you would use nodes. And DP's nodes are pretty much the same here. The only real difference is you have this interpolation option. As I said, each frame of the MDD is kind of like a morph, so the transition from one frame to the next is just a linear transform. Switching to spline will try and smooth those transforms out across frames. So therefore, if you are slowing down an MDD, getting in between frames, this can give you a smoother result. You'll notice that DP also has a mapped time on his, which is envelopable when turned on. So this means you can speed it up and slow it down via a curve in the graph editor. We could do the same thing here, because again, the replay speed is envelopable, as is the frame offset in the regular node. With the DP one though, you do have a time input, so you could be driving that time by other node networks. And these same settings are available here for DP's other nodes. Of course, with the meta pointer you get a cage object, so you would select the object that the original MDD belongs to, and it uses that to try and fit to whichever alternate object you're meta applying the vertex cache to. And the PC2 pointer and the BDD player have exactly the same sort of settings as his MDD pointer. And that's all there is to them. I mean, these settings are really no different to the displacement plugins that we've been used to for a number of years now. So that's pretty straightforward. What we're going to do then is have a look quickly at some of the tricks that we can do in Node Editor, thanks to the fact that we've got our MDD displacements available here. Best place to begin is just to hook up this node that I already have here, and what we can see I've got is a little MDD of a guy taking a little walk, coming to a stop, cutting out somewhere around 220 there. There he is, starts out standing, walks forward a bit, and then stops again. Okay, so here's what I want to do, is I want to extend the amount he's walking for. As it happens, I have another MDD file, and this one is just him walking. Now he is performing a walk, nothing more. So let's try and hook these two MDDs into each other. Basically, I'm going to cross blend out of one and into the other to give myself extra walking in between. So the first thing I want to do is line them up in time. Why? Well, let us observe. If I grab a simple mixer here, put one into background, one into foreground. Color to the input is going to throw in a null very quickly to the scene, and I'm going to use its X channel to drive the opacity. If I come, I don't know, I say from here, I'm going to take a 20 frame blend there across to 60, set this to 1 meter so we get the complete blend. We see, of course, what happens in between is we get this slide. As it happens, our timings aren't too far out on one another, but if they were somewhat different, I'm just going to shift one in time here, let's just say 10 frames, then we can see that things start to get a little more squinchy. If I, for instance, take out the background color entirely, then do we see the hands here and the arms? They're kind of shrinking as we go between zero displacement and the morph, or the MDD rather, because it is kind of just like a morph. It's like this were our 0% morph and that were our 100% morph, and so the transition between the two is just linear. So the first trick to this is the fact that they've got to have pretty close poses to one another doing the overlap. You can't have one guy pointing left, the next one pointing right, and hope to blend smoothly between them. But fortunately, these are both travelling in the same direction as one another, so all we need to do for starters is to take a look at where's a good overlap point for them. So I'm going to come along here, he's doing his walk, and that's where he's coming to a stop, so let's say there he's still sort of striding. Okay, I'm going to go after the foot contact pose, I think. So let's check it out. It's coming forward and starts to just make contact there, I think. Look at it from another angle to be sure. Yeah, okay, I'm going to say that's contact point, and from there it goes down. So contact point is at frame 73. So we take a look at our second thing here, and we see that he's stationary to start with. He doesn't actually start moving there until, well, frame 33 is his first move, so that means that 32 is his first frame. But this one, 33, that's the contact pose I'm looking for, straight away. So 33 wants to become 73. Let me just double check, 73 was the contact pose, not the pose before, was it not? Yes, 73 is the contact pose. So we get this guy, was at 33, we want it at 73, so we need to move it 40, frame offset 40. What we find is this has moved it backwards in time. See, it's now starting 40 frames earlier. We want it later, so frame offset is actually negative 40. Okay, brilliant. So spin round, zoom out a little bit, so as we can see him here. Frame 73 there, frame 73 there. Okay, good stuff. Instead of a mixer here, I'm going to use a gradient. Here's what I'm going to set. I may as well just use this null still. I'll make that my input, so I'm getting the X position of the null here. And I'm going to send it from 0 to 1. That's fine. Key at 0, key at 1. And I'm going to set them both to show output here. And I can connect my first displacement to key 1 color, and my second displacement to key 2 color. So with this null at 0 on the X, then I'm getting the first MDD, and with it at 1 on the X, I'm going to get the second. So I'm going to begin the blend on that first frame of this guy, so 72, and let's say 10 frames, shall we? Frame 82, we put it over at 1 meter, and we hook the color into the displacement destination. Okay, and there we go. We can see that the blend is happening. You can see that we're getting a shrinkage between that strange behavior. But of course, even though they're in sync in time, if we watch his actual legs moving there, that's pretty good, but they're most certainly not in sync in space. So, how to take care of this? We may have been familiar in years past to having a different mode for MDDs, whether it was going to be local or world. We don't have that in this node. But that's okay. To be honest, sometimes I used to find it a bit twitchy and unpredictable, but I largely ignored it. In Node Editor, it doesn't matter. And not having the feature built into the node does not matter, because I can add another null. I'm going to call this MDD, offset there, get an item info for it, that's my MDD offset null, get a math vector add, and I can add the position of this null to the position of that displacement, and plug it into the key there. And so now when I reposition this null, the MDD goes with it, effectively. So, where was our crossover? Frame 73. And just pull you up for a second. Hook my first displacement over like that. I'm going to use the orthogonal views here. Okay, so there he is. You know what? I'm just going to line up his toe there with the edge of my object properties panel, and I'm going to throw in the second displacement. Okay, so he's there. So I can pull my... Oops, no, sorry, I want to pull the added on result, don't I? There we go. So now I can move my null, and this will move the MDD there. Okay, there we are, just about in line. Let's check it out. Yep, pretty close. Okay, good. Let's check out the other view now. View 1, can't even see where he is. Let's hook in the first displacement. Oh, there he is. You know what, I'm going to use my panel here again for lining up. And just put the side of his foot alongside it there. There's my second displacement, shove it across on the X by quite a little bit. And there we go, more or less in line. Can jump to perspective now. Okay, that's the original, or first MDD, and there's the second. Not a perfect alignment, because of course they're different animations, but they're in pretty much the same position. It's close enough. So let's hook over and see what we get with our blend. There we go, not too bad. Look at that. So we've got him walking and he carries on doing that walk there. Magic. And there we go. That's how we line up and mix and match and blend our MDDs. And of course, here he just comes to a dead stop. Were I wanting to continue that back on and blend back into the original MDD again to have him coming to a stop as he did, then I could just get another copy of that displacement, add a third key, take this up to 2, let's say, and I'd be able to have my third displacement coming in there, and then animating my control null from the 1 position to the 2 position would let me do that blend. I would of course time offset this to line back up as it needed to, and I could, in theory, just keep doing that with as many MDDs as I wanted. As we've seen, it only works that well if your MDDs roughly match on the exchange pose. This technique is completely useless for mixing very different ones. But for a lot of stuff like this, it can be handy. And don't forget, even though these guys are walking in the same direction, luckily, as my MDDs were, if they were not, if the second one were travelling a different direction in world space, I could have used further transforms to rotate it around. But there we go, that is pretty much it. The other reason that it's good to think on techniques like this, and especially mixing MDDs in a gradient, is what hopefully will happen when we're able to use mixed MDDs for instances. The idea, of course, being that you take the instance ID as the input, and that allows you to throw a different MDD onto different instances in the same way that we can currently mix up materials. Hopefully that'll be coming one day. In the meantime, this is a handy little trick that we can pull off. And that's pretty much all there is to know about using MDDs in the node editor.